That was the discussion in the Mishnah. So there was an opinion that says that there is a max size of an etrog. You have to be able, the etrog can't be too large that you can't hold two of those etrogim at the same time. It has to be not that large that you have to be able. And the Gemara explained, we explained, because in case you have to switch hands, you have to have able to hold both the etrog and the lulav at the same time, and therefore it can't be. It has to be large enough that you can hold two of that size of that etrog. But the other opinion says no. The other opinion says that there is no max on the size of an etrog, and that opinion was the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says even an etrog that's so large that you have to hold it with two hands. You need two hands to hold that etrog. That's on 30. That's on the Mishnah. And now comes the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi is going to prove his point. So Rabbi Yossi is the one that's mentioned in the Mishnah earlier. It was Rabbi Yossi. It was Rabbi Yossi who says that there's no max for a etrog. It could even be so large that you could have two hands to hold it. So now the Gemara says, now with Tanya Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi where is his source? Good morning, Boker Tov. What's the source for Rabbi Yossi? His source is Maisa. There's a story by Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Akiva. There's a story of Rabbi Akiva. Shebal lebeit knesset. Good morning, everybody. We're doing the Gemara in Sukkah, and we're going to be finished at 7:25. There'll be a 7:30 minyan upstairs. Is that good? No. There's a 6:30 minyan upstairs now, and then there's going to be a 7:30 minyan also. 7:30. Next minyan is 7:30. If you're able to stay for the 7:30 minyan, you could. It's not going to start till 7:30. If you can't stay that late, then the minyan now is the 6:30 minyan is happening upstairs. So whatever your schedule is, if you want to join the learning, we're learning Gemara Sukkah. You're invited to join the learning. Okay. So the Gemara said, what's the reason for Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yossi says that an etrog could be there's no max on etrog. And where is his source? So he brings the Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Ma'aseh Rabbi Akiva. There was a story of Rabbi Akiva, Shebal lebeit knesset. He came to shul with etrogo al katefo, and he had an etrog on his shoulders. That was the story of Rabbi Akiva. So what minyan you want to daven? Which minyan do you want? What? 7. That's a mistake. Where does it say that it's at? Where is it? Where is it? You got to tell them it's a mistake. You should send them an email that it's a mistake. 7:30, 6:30, and 7:30. So Rabbi Akiva had an etrog on his shoulders. So what's the story over here? The story goes, Rabbi Akiva came to the synagogue. He had an etrog on his shoulders. Now you can imagine the size of such an etrog. If he had the etrog, what did he say? Sounds like a watermelon, right? So what happened? So that was the source for the halacha. So Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Yossi, right? Rabbi Yossi wants to prove by the fact that Rabbi Akiva did such a thing. He wants to prove that the halacha is you can have an etrog. There's no max for an etrog. How would you fulfill the mitzvah? You take the lulav, I mean, the Torah says you should take for yourself a lulav, an etrog, a dasim, and a ravot. So you don't have to necessarily take them all simultaneously. You pick up the lulav with the lulav. Let's say has with the lulav, you have the adasim, the ravot. No problem having them all together. Which technically you also don't need to have them together according to this opinion. You could pick up the lulav, and then after you pick up the lulav, you put down the lulav, and you picked up the etrog. Meaning, what happened was probably you would say the bracha Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu masot v'shon al tilat lulav. You would say the bracha, that we recite for taking lulav and etrog, and as long as you don't make any hefsek and you don't make any interruption between the bracha and the mitzvah, so you get credit. You went ahead, you said the bracha on the lulav. You have in mind the dasim, the ravot, and the etrog. The Torah gave you a commandment to take the four minim, the four species. So he took the four minim. He took all four. He took it, and there wasn't really much, and he didn't really. On a Torah level, the Torah does not require you to say a bracha on the lulav, and that's not ravot. The Rabbanan say you have to go ahead and say bracha before you do the mitzvah, right? So as long as you don't interrupt between taking the lulav and adasim and arovat and etrog, you're good. Just like, I'll give you an example. Tefillin. The Sfardim, they say one bracha on the shel yad and on the shel rosh, right? You say the bracha laniach tefillin. It covers the hand and the head. Ashkenazim, they say a bracha laniach tefillin, that's for the hand and the head, and they say a second bracha on the head, on the shel rosh. Meaning the first bracha that they say on the hand goes for the hand and the rosh, and they have a second bracha on the rosh. But the fact that you could be saying one bracha before you tie the shel yad, and that bracha goes both for the shel yad and for the shel rosh. And it's not called a problem that there's time between the fact that you're saying the bracha when you say laniach tefillin, and it goes both for the hand and the head. You just don't interrupt. You don't respond to kaddish. You don't say good morning to someone between right. You don't talk between the time you say the bracha until you have the sharosh in place. So that bracha covers both. And so too over here, what's unique, even by tefillin, each item is a separate mitzvah. The tefillin on the hand is one mitzvah. Tefillin on the rosh, on the head, is another mitzvah. What's unique over here is that even though all four species, the lulav and the etrog and das haravas, are all one mitzvah, but you could perform this mitzvah by taking, morning, Mr. Haber, by taking each thing one right after the other. So therefore, you can take the lulav with the hadasim and the ravot, and immediately after taking the lulav and the ravot, you can place down the hadasim and the ravot and the lulav, and then you can pick up the etrog. That is the opinion of Rav Yossi, and he found that. And where is his proof from? His proof was he found Rabbi Akiva, the great Rabbi Akiva. He brought to shul an etrog. He had with etrog on his shoulder. Now, the obvious question you could ask, why did Rabbi Akiva go use such an etrog? I don't believe that such an etrog was a common thing to find an etrog that's so large. So why is he bringing such a big size etrog? I would think that Rabbi Akiva brought such an etrog because he wanted to illustrate the halacha. Rabbi Akiva wanted to show, at least in his opinion, and that seems to be the established halacha, that Rabbi Akiva wanted to show sometimes rabbis do certain things to teach the people through their actions, not just what they say, but when they do something, people will view it, they would see it, and they say, wow, now we learned the halacha. So Rabbi Akiva comes to shul, Mr. Haber, with an etrog on his shoulder. You should imagine what kind of how big of an etrog you're carrying a major etrog. It just says he came to shul and his etrog was on his shoulder. I don't know that he logically, I would say he used the same etrog every day. And why did he come to shul with such a big, large etrog? He wanted to show the people that there's no max on an etrog, size on an etrog. But there was an opinion. There was an opinion that says there is a max. There was an opinion that says the etrog can't be too big. Can't be. You have to have. It can't be too large. And the Kiva wanted to show you it's no problem. And based on that, Rabbi Yossi agrees with Rabbi Akiva. And he says, that's why he says you can have no limitation on the size of an etrog. Omolo Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda did hold there's a limitation on the size of an etrog. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't have an etrog too big, you can't hold two of them simultaneously. You can't hold, let's say if this is the same size, you can't hold two of these at the same time. If two etrogim at the same time, it's no good. If the size of an etrog is too large, if you have two of them, it's no good. And you can't hold two of them simultaneously, it's no good. And Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda says, Misham Raya, you want to bring us proof from what Rabbi Akiva did, that he came with such a large etrog? Amrulo Afhaim, the rabbis that was there at the time that Rabbi Akiva brought such an etrog to shul on his shoulders, Amrulo, they said to Rabbi Akiva, Ein zeh hadar. They told Rabbi Akiva, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that the rabbis, now Rabbi Yossi did not have such a recording, but Rabbi Yehuda says, I have a tradition that what happened over there was the rabbis told Rabbi Akiva, this is not hadar. This is not beautiful. The Torah says when it comes to etrog, it has to be a pre-8 hadar. It has to be a beautiful etrog. And we learn out from there, if an etrog is dried out, last year's etrog you can't use. It's an etrog, but it's dried out. So too, the same way you can't use last year's etrog because it's missing in hadar, missing in beauty. This etrog that's so, we'll call it not usual etrog. It's not an etrog that's so big as Ralph said, the size of a watermelon. That's not a beautiful etrog. In a certain sense, some things that are too large, too big, not always as big sign of beauty. You've seen big etrog, but there are some big etrog, right? But not necessarily that not always the fact that something is big, that is beautiful. Something so large, not necessarily is makes it so beautiful. It's also the fact that it's not the norm. Good morning, Jaime.
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning. We're just talking about the issue: is there a max to the size of an etrog? Rabbi Akiva came to shul with an etrog on his shoulder, such a large etrog, and Rabbi Yehuda said that the rabbis told him that etrog that's so large, it's not beautiful. It's not something that's beautiful, and sometimes certain certain things that are too big, they don't fit. They don't, and that's not, and therefore he says, it's not kosher for an etrog. But the halacha follows the opinion that there is no max on an etrog.
But doesn't it have to fit in the palm of your hand for the mitzvah? Because if it's so big that you can't hold it with one hand.
So, I would think most probably it's definitely, I would think, more ideal that you should be able to hold it and you're able to shake the lulav and the etrog simultaneously, right? We do the nanuim, we shake the lulav, we wave the lulav in all different directions with the etrog. But on a technical point, really, you could fulfill. Now, I presume they would do the nanuim. He would do it most probably not simultaneously, according to this opinion. Now, let's understand something. To fulfill the mitzvah of etrog, the waving of the lulav in all different directions is not a requirement in order for you to fulfill the biblical obligation of etrog. The biblical obligation of etrog is technically fulfilled when you pick up that lulav, the hadasim, the aravot, and the etrog. That would fulfill the biblical obligation. And maybe, and so therefore, even if you wouldn't be able to waive it all simultaneously, but it's possible that you could waive them possibly not simultaneously. You waive the lulav and you picked up the etrog. Because Rabbi Akiva holds, you do not need to have them all simultaneously in order for you to fill the mitzvah. You can pick up the lulav that has the hadassim and the aravot. You say the bracha, al natilat lulav, pick up the lulav, that's aravot, and then you pick up the etrog, and if you put it down, and then you pick up the etrog, you did it. You took the 4 species. You didn't take it exactly at the same time, but you did what Hashem said to do. Hashem says, I want you to go ahead and take the 4 species. You did it. So that's the opinion of, so I would agree with Jaime that definitely that's not something that we would suggest, recommend to do, but halachically, you would fulfill the mitzvah of, and it will come out, so luckily you fulfill the mitzvah. It could come out based on this. When we take the etrog, we're very careful that if someone hands somebody, let's say you didn't do the mitzvah yet, right? So what do? We take the lulav, and then we hold the etrog upside down, right? That's how we Ashkenazim before we say the bracha, right? We hold it upside down, and then we say the bracha, and then after we say the bracha, we turn over the etrog. Correct? That's how you do a mistake, right? Now, the reason for that is because you don't get the mitzvah is not performed. You don't get credit for the mitzvah unless you held that etrog and the lulav the way they're supposed to be, the way they're grown, the way they're supposed to be held. So by holding it upside down, the etrog, you did not get credit for the mitzvah yet. And the bracha that we say precedes the mitzvah, right? You say a bracha, Asher Kiddushim Rasot Mitzvah Atvat Lulav. Generally, we say a bracha before the performance of a mitzvah. So therefore, and we want to keep the performance of the mitzvah as close. We don't want too much time between the bracha and the performance of the mitzvah. So that most probably is the reason why we hold it in our hand, but we just don't hold it the right way. And therefore, we don't get credit yet for the mitzvah. And therefore, we say the bracha, and then we turn over the etrog. But according to this Gemara, that you could technically fulfill the mitzvah if you're not holding it, even if you're not holding them simultaneously. As long as you hold it the right way, you will fulfill the mitzvah. So it would come out that a person should be careful not to take the lulav. If I'm going to take the lulav, and then I'll pick up the lulav and I'll put it down, and if I take the etrog right after that and I hold the etrog in the right way it's supposed to be held to fill the mitzvah, not upside down, then I already did the mitzvah without saying the bracha. So I would say you should be careful also. It's not only to be careful not to hold the lulav and the etrog in the right way until after you say the bracha, even if you're not holding them simultaneously at the same time. But if you're holding one and then you're going to put one down and then pick up the etrog in the right way, that could also, you should avoid doing that as well. Meaning to say, until you say the bracha, don't hold the etrog the right way. Keep the etrog upside down. Then after you understand what I'm saying? After you said the bracha, al natilat lulav, then you turn the etrog over in the right way. Okay, so that ends that piece of the Gemara. Now comes the Mishnah on 36b, 36b2. Ein ogdin et lulav el v'mino. The question is, we tie the lulav. The custom is that you tie the lulav with the hadassim and the aravot. But the question is, are you required to tie the lulav with the hadassim and the aravot? Or could you hold the hadassim and the aravot loose? I have the lulav in my hand, and I have hadassim and aravot, and they're not tied. Now, Mr. Haber's looking at me, Rabbi, what do you mean? If I can read your face. Rabbi, we all tie the hadassim and the aravot to the lulav. That's true. We tie it because for beautification purposes. It beautifies it by tying together. But this issue of tying it is a question in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, you have an obligation on a Torah level to tie the Hadassim and Neravot to the lulav. We hold in practice, there's no biblical obligation for you to tie the Hadassim and Neravot to the lulav. You have to take that lulav, you have to have Hadassim and Neravot. The same way the etrog is not tied to the lulav, the Hadassim and Neravot also don't have to be tied to the lulav, according to from a halachic on a Torah level, but we do it to beautify the mitzvah. But this is a matter of dispute. There is an opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that says that you're mandated, part of the mitzvah of the lulav is to make sure that the hadassim and the ravot are tied to the lulav. And now the Mishnah is going to talk about certain ramifications of this issue. Ein ogdin, comes the Mishnah and says, Ein ogdin et lulav el b'mino. Div Rabbi Yehuda, morning. The question is, what type of material could you use to tie the lulav, the hadassim and the ravot to the lulav? What type of material are you allowed to use? So comes the Mishnah. The Mishnah states you cannot tie the lulav only b'mino. The only thing you're allowed to use to tie it is something that comes from the lulav itself. Bimino, the Gemara will explain exactly what is it's either something that grew from the palm tree or something that grew from hadassim or something from the 4 species. Anything from the hadassim and the aravot and the lulav. You can't use something that comes from the esrog tree, something that's the esrog tree is not going to tie it very well, but you could use anything from the hadassim, from the aravot, and from the lulav tree. That can be used to tie the lulav. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, meaning it's very specific. We're very specific in what is the item that you want to use. You want to tie the lulav and the etrog, you have to use, it has to be from its own kind, so to speak. Part of a palm, part of a myrtle, part of a willow branch. Okay? Now, there was a discussion whether you could use, material from an esrog tree. We'll see a little bit more about that. But that's the opinion of Yehuda. Comes Rameya Omer, Rameya says, Afilu b'chut m'shlicha. You can even use a linen thread. You can even use linen, which linen has nothing to do with hadassim and aravot and lulav. It's not from the species. You can even use a lulav if you want to. You're not restricted in the material that you use for tying the hadassim and aravot to the lulav. Amar Rav Meir. And Rav Meir wants to illustrate this point. He's going to prove this point. Ma'aseh Reb Anshi Yerushalayim. There was a story with the Anshi Yerushalayim. The Anshi Yerushalayim are men of Yerushalayim. These are people of great action, great character. They actually tied the lulav with threads, strings made out of gold, gold fibers. So, and why did they use gold fibers to tie the hadassim and aravot to the lulav? It was a sign of beautifying. These are people that were Anshi Yerushalayim. These are the wealthy people of Jerusalem, and God blessed them with wealth, and they wanted to beautify the mitzvah. So how did they beautify the mitzvah? They said, we have an opportunity, we could tie the hadassim and aravot using gold fibers, gold thread, to go ahead and tie the hadassim and aravot. There's a mitzvah called beautifying a mitzvah. We have a nice etrog box, right? There's different things that we do to beautify a mitzvah. A nice Megillah case for Megillah Esther coming up, right? Some people have a nice Megillah case made out of silver. So here they beautified the mitzvah by having these beautiful things that tied the Hadassim and the Aravot, these beautiful gold fibers. Amrolo, so the rabbis told Rameir, you want to prove your point from the fact what you saw, what you heard about the people of Yerushalayim, that they tied the Hadassim and the Aravot to the lulav with these gold fibers. Morning. How did they tie? Really, in truth, they tied it with its kind. On the bottom of where the bottom, near the bottom of the lulav, it was tied with, let's say, a palm branch. It was tied with a piece of the same way we tied a lulav in the etrog, with something from the palm leaves. It was tied with that. In addition to tying it on the bottom, to beautify it, they tied it with, they put some gold fibers around to tie the Hadassim and the Aravot. But really, that wasn't the way they tied it. The real tie was with something else. And therefore, meaning to say, they're saying, the rabbis are saying to Rameya, you need to tie it with its own kind. And it was tied with its own kind. This extra thing that they did was not the tying. This was beautification. And therefore, you can't prove that you can actually tie it with something other than the four species, other than its own kind. On the bottom, they tied it with gold, with leaves from the lulav itself, and therefore that's why they were able to tie it on top with gold. So therefore, again, so it comes to machloket. The argument is: are you allowed to tie the Hadassim and Aravot with other items? You see, Rabbi Yehuda. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion you must tie the Hadassim and the Aravot to the lulav. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The question is, once you have to tie it, can you tie it with any material, or could you tie? You have to be very specific on the material that you use to tie it. And we'll see how the Gemara is going to explain. Omar Rava. Rava says, Afilu b'siv. Rava says you could even tie the lulav with the ivy that grows around the trunk and the palm of the palm tree. The ivy is considered, since it grows from the tree, that's also considered proper. It's called from the four minim. It's called, you're not using an outside species to tie it. It's considered, the ivy is considered the thing itself. The ivy is considered like the same way you could tie the lulav with the lulav leaves, right? How do we tie it? We use that, take a piece of the lulav from the side of the lulav, and they use that, and they cut that off and they tie it. That's a lot of people use that to tie it. So too, this is also called part of the lulav. It's the ivy that grows around the tree is also called the lulav tree. Afilu bikar de dikla, even strips of the bark from the trunk of the palm tree, that also could be used. Because the fact that it came from the palm tree, that's enough that it's called, you're tying it with its kind, bimino, and therefore it's good. Now comes the Gemara, and the Gemara says, and Rava, what Rava Rashi explained, Rava is coming to teach you that Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning that it has nothing to do with Hadar. It's not about that you have to go ahead and beautify. The fact that Rabbi Yehuda holds you have to tie the lulav with its kind, right? Rabbi Yehuda went on record. You have to tie the lulav with something from the lulav itself. Now, if you're going to use the bark of the lulav, from the bark of the palm tree, it's not a point of beauty. It's not because it's not for beautification purposes. It's not going to be so beautiful. It's not beautifying it in such a strong way by using a bark of the tree. So therefore, it's that's what we're. It's rather there's some other reason that's pulling Rabbi Yehuda to require you to use it from its own species, not it's what use the goal. Right. That very like Ralph says. The problem, what his problem is, and the Gemara says, Amar Rava, my time with Rabbi Yehuda. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say you cannot use the gold? Because Sava Lulav Sarach Eget. Rabbi Yehuda holds a lulav needs to be tied. You have to tie the lulav, like we said before. There is an opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that says you have to tie the lulav. And since he holds you have to tie the lulav, meaning you have to tie the hadasim and the aravot to the lulav. And if you're going to use a different species like gold fibers, it's like, the Torah says you're not allowed to add to the mitzvah. You can't go ahead and put an extra parashaf to the tefillin into your tefillin box. It's 4, not 5. When the Kohanim say the brachot, they have to say 3 brachot. Yivrach Hashem yishmerecha, Yashem panav alecha v'chonecha, Yis Hashem panav alecha v'yasem v'chashem. That's 3 brachot. You can't throw in a 4th for good luck. The brach, that's the 3. So if you're going to throw in if you're going to tie it with a gold fiber, since it's a foreign, it's not part of the species. That's like you threw in something extra. Like you took a 5th item. Person, I want you to take 4 items. And if you tie it with some foreign substance, if you tie it with the same substance, that's not called this. You took a 5th thing. It's part of those species. We look at it like it's not a new thing you took. Rava, he says, Sava lulav sarach eged. Lulav you have to tie. And if you go ahead and you bring a different item, then the problem would be it's like you go ahead and you made a 5th, you brought 5 items. And the Torah says, Bal Tosif. The Torah says you can't go ahead and add to the mitzvah. And the Gemara later is going to explain Reb Meir's opinion that says you could use other items. But now we'll explain Rabbi Yehuda. V'amar Rava, and Rava says, Minah min Allah. How do I know the sieve, the ikara the dikla mina delulavahu? See, Rava went on record. Rava said you could even use the ivy of the tree. You could even use the part of the bark of the trunk of the tree. And where does he know that's also called part of the tree? So we'll see tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll continue to see more about that. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day and looking forward to Sukkot. All the best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Everybody. Thank you.